ऑन है? हाँ. Good afternoon to all of you. Good morning. Good evening. आज आप लोग का वो टेस्ट भी होगा, ठीक है? थर्ड टॉपिक, जस्ट 20 क्वेश्चंस 15 मिनट्स. कितने दिन बाद आ रहे हो? आज का न्यूज़ कल वाला पढ़ लिए? कोई डाउट नहीं है? तो नो वन हैज एनी डाउट्स? तो आपको क्या लगता है, वॉर हो जाएगा? हाँ, आप लोग चाहते हो या नहीं चाहते हो? तो लॉस तो ऐसे भी होता है. चलो, गुड. What do you think? What was the GDP growth before independence? कितना रहा होगा? 2.5%. Less than 1% approximately. Somewhere it is reported 0.6%, somewhere it is reported 0.7%. So economy was almost stagnated. 0.6, 0.7% economic growth, almost economy was stagnated. What were the reasons? Our economic growth in the first 50 years of 20th century was very low, almost stagnated. What were the reasons? There were 2-3 major important reasons. 2-3, और जैसे हम इसको पढ़ा रहे हैं आप वैसे ही समझते जाना, ठीक है? Today we will be discussing what was the situation of economy at independence, what policies we followed, what challenges we faced, what were the major structural bottlenecks which led to the slow growth of Indian economy during this period, what factors resulted into 1991 crisis, and then maybe reforms what we did, that we'll be discussing in the next class. So today's is basically economic history from 47 to 1991. But to understand what was the situation of economy in 1947, we'll have to go a little bit before. So Britishers basically they destroyed our economy, and our economic growth was less than 1%. 2-3 main important reasons. 2-3 main important reasons. The first, what is necessarily required for economic growth? Investment, capital goods, right? We require capital goods for economic growth. And capital goods, so if when we save more capital goods gets produced in the economy. ठीक है? If you we produce more output, we get more income. If you will consume with all our income, then no capital goods will be produced. Whatever we save, द इकोनॉमी प्रोड्यूसेस कैपिटल गुड्स, ये क्लियर है ना? हाँ. Now during the British period what was happening? Majority of the economy was agriculture dependent. ठीक है. Now consider a case of the farmers. ठीक है, farmers का केस एक कंसिडर करो. So farmer produced wheat. ठीक है, farmer produced wheat. He got that wheat as an income. He got, suppose that wheat itself, it came as towards him as an income. Then some wheat he used to consume. If some wheat he sells in the market, that is his savings. See, I am working as a farmer, so I produce wheat. I got that, rather than income, I am getting wheat back as my income. Now that wheat, some wheat I will consume and some wheat I will sell in the market. That will be my savings. ठीक है ना? That will be my savings. Or you can think like, I produced wheat, it was sold in the market, I got income. With some income I purchased wheat, rice, other things, and some income I saved. ऐसे भी आप सोच सकते हो. If that was a barter economy, not cash based, so you can think like, I produced wheat, I got wheat as it is. Now some wheat I consumed, and rest of the wheat I sold in the market, and I did savings. Now with that savings, in normal example you saw that savings people kept in bank, companies borrowed, and then they purchased capital goods. In this case, now farmer, till now in this example, he has worked as a household person. ठीक है, so he produced, he got wheat, he consumed some of the wheat, and some of the wheat is left, which is his surplus or savings. Now he acts as businessman, he sells that wheat in the market. Whatever income he gets, whatever is his savings, with this savings, now he acts as a businessman and he purchases a tractor, capital. He is not going to put any bank. With the savings, he is purchasing as a tractor, and now he is acting as a businessman. He is putting that tractor into agriculture, and production grows. समझ रहे? You replicate that burger example here. So if a farmer produces wheat, he gets wheat as his income. Some part of wheat he consumes and some part he saves. Whatever he saves, he himself acts as business, and with that saving he may purchase a tractor or other equipments. That equipment he puts, that capital he puts into agriculture, and next year production grows. Next year production grows. If some economy is totally agriculture based and you want to increase agricultural production, you will have to put capital into agriculture investment. But in British period, what happened? Whatever he used to produce and whatever he used to get, some part he used to consume, rest was taken forcefully by the Britishers. Rest was taken forcefully by the Britishers. So whatever was our savings of the economy, savings is also called surplus. Surplus means whatever is left after consumption. So whatever was our economic savings or surplus, that was taken over by Britishers, and this money, even Britishers, they spent this money on revenue kind of expenditure, maintaining huge army, or they sent some of this money abroad, Britain. Even if Britishers would have collected this forcefully, and even if they would have put, with that money, if they would have put capital into agriculture, our economy would have grown. But they forcefully took our savings or surplus, and then they spent this money as a revenue kind of expenditure or sent this abroad. So we did, till this period mostly, we have not been able to put our extra savings surplus again into the economy as capital or investment. That is why economic growth was almost stagnated, because you have understood that to increase your output, you must put capital into economy. That increases the products. So that was the basic premise. Whatever was our savings or surplus that was taken over by Britishers, either they sent it abroad or they spent on maintaining army or other wasteful expenditure. ठीक है? This was an important reason. Second, वैल्यू एडिशन तो समझते हो? Value addition simple. If I am a farmer, I am producing wheat and I am selling at rupees 18 per kg. So if I produce 1 kg wheat, my value addition is 18 rupees. ठीक है, my value addition is 18 rupees. There is a term called terms of trade. Terms of trade. So 1 kg potato, when the farmer sells, what amount he gets generally? 5 rupees 6. Huh? What farmers get? 10-15 किसी फार्मर को नहीं मिलता है, ठीक है. फार्मर्स आर गेटिंग हाउ मेनी रुपीज? 4-5 रुपीज. 5 रुपीज से ज़्यादा किसी फार्मर को तो हमने नहीं देखा आज तक कि मिलता हुआ, ठीक है. कहीं किसी को ज़्यादा मिल गया होगा, दैट्स अ डिफरेंट थिंग. बिकॉज हियर यू पे 20 रुपीज, 25 रुपीज. द रिटेलर्स परचेज इन द मंडी 10 to 12 rupees. The wholesalers purchase from the farmers at around max 5 rupees, max. So farmers are selling at rupees 5. Now with that same potato, when Uncle Chips is prepared, तो 1 kg Uncle Chips का प्राइस कितना है? मे बी 400-500, जो भी आप अज्यूम कर लो, ठीक है. सो 1 kg Uncle Chips, द प्राइस इज 500 रुपीज, ठीक है. अब बहुत सारे चिप्स आ गए, मुझे एक ही नाम याद आता है, ठीक है. सो 1 kg Uncle Chips, द प्राइस इज रुपीज 500. सो उसमें देर आर 2 सेक्टर्स इन्वॉल्व. वन इज फार्म एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर एंड अदर इज industrial sector. Agriculture, industry, services, we have 3 sectors. Manufacturing is a part of industrial sector. So, so agriculture, industry and services. So, so 1 kg Uncle Chips price rupees 500. So, when you paid 500 to purchase 1 kg Uncle Chips, out of that 500, rupees 5 went to the agriculture sector or the labor dependent on agriculture sector, and 495 went to the processing, manufacturing, industrial sector. So we say that ki terms of trade is favoring industrial sector more as compared to the agricultural sector. Terms of trade is favoring industrial sector more as compared to the agricultural sector. And since terms of trade is favoring more to the industrial sector, the value addition in agriculture sector is less. Value addition means whatever price they are fetching for their work. So value addition is less. And when value addition in agriculture sector is less, that means the labor dependent in agriculture sector, his income will always be less. ठीक है. Now there is another term called division of labor. Division of labor का मतलब होता है, in an automobile company, suppose the car is being produced. Now one labor doesn't produces the entire end-to-end process. They have a specific task cut out. One labor does some other activity, another labor does some other activity. So at that time there was a kind of division of labor which we call it international division of labor. International division of labor in the sense, if a needle is being produced at that time, for that needle we require coal, steel, right? So if a needle is being produced, the coal which was required for that India was producing, and manufacturing of that needle was happening in Britain. ठीक है. So international division of labor means out of that needle, whatever process it goes, Indian labor is doing agricultural activity, primary activities, and British laborer are doing secondary activities. International division of labor. Indian labor primary activities, British labor secondary activities, and secondary activity value addition is more, like this. Secondary activity value addition is more. So British laborer was getting much more money as compared to the Indian labor. क्या पॉलिटी का भी 1 घंटा क्रैश कोर्स करके आ रहे हो क्या आप लोग? बैठ जाओ. So Indian labor was involved into lower level of economic activity. British laborers were doing high level of economic activity, more value addition. They were fetching much more income as compared to our labor. So our labor remained poor as compared to those people. So we used to do primary activities and then we used to export our raw materials and they used to manufacture those materials. So they were earning much more wages, and with our primary activities wages, we again used to purchase those manufactured items. With our primary activities wages, we are again purchasing those manufactured items. So our savings was almost negligible. Do you know what was the अभी जैसे इंडिया का savings and investment rate is around 28-29%. At that time it was 3%. At that time it was 3%, and you know that when savings investment is 0%, GDP growth will be same. का क्या मतलब है? Zero ना, GDP growth I am asking, it will be 0%. So savings investment 3% था and GDP growth 0.5-0.6%. ठीक है. सो इंटरनेशनल सेकेंड, फर्स्ट आप समझ गए, मोस्ट ऑफ द सेविंग्स वॉज एक्सट्रैक्टेड बाय ब्रिटिशर्स विच दे डिडंट स्पेंट इनटू कैपिटल इन्वेस्टमेंट, रादर दे स्पेंट इनटू revenue kind of expenditure and they sent some money abroad. Second, Indian labor was deployed into primary activities, British laborers were doing secondary activities, our labor was doing less value addition. So our economic earning, the earnings or wages was very less as compared to the other laborers. So when our earning is less, that means our whole country's income is less. As of today also, if any country is more involved into agriculture and other country is doing manufacturing, who will be more rich? Manufacturing. Why they will be more rich? Because the work that you do in manufacturing, that fetches more money, and then you say that you have more value addition and you get more money. So आज भी वो true है that those countries who are doing more manufacturing, they will be earning more money as compared to those countries which are doing agricultural products. And why do the manufactured items fetches more money? ये भी तो क्वेश्चन अभी आया, वो सेटल हो जाओ थोड़ा. हाँ, why you are seeing this na, that manufacturing activity fetches more money, and that is why we say that ki manufactured items has more value addition. उसी को बोलते हैं कि more value addition. If I am producing wheat and if that wheat fetches rupees 500 per kg, my value addition is 500. ठीक है? So manufactured items fetches more money. Why is this so?
The reason is because they are finally consumed goods. For example, if I am
finally consumed goods, wheat is also finally consumed.
If I am producing sugar cane, I cannot consume the sugar cane.
Yeah, wheat I am producing, that is also more capital. देखो आप इकोनॉमी को थोड़ा सिंपल ही रखना, एकदम इट्स क्वाइट सिंपल, बस आप स्टेप बाय स्टेप यू कीप ऑन अप्लाइंग लॉजिक. हाँ, और कोई? बिगर इन्वेस्टमेंट, राइट. और कोई?
There are certain raw materials which cannot be consumed directly. They need to be processed and given a final form so that it can.
But then those items which can be finally consumed, they should have more price as per your logic, like wheat, rice, pulses, and स्किल्स एक देखो, देयर आर अदर आंसर ऑल्सो, जैसे कैपिटल इन्वेस्टमेंट, उसमें ज़्यादा पैसा लगता है सच, बट स्किल्स इज द मोस्ट अप्रोप्रिएट आंसर बिकॉज एग्रीकल्चर के लिए एज सच यू डोंट रिक्वायर स्किल. एग्रीकल्चर के लिए एज सच यू डोंट रिक्वायर स्किल. मैन्युफैक्चरिंग के लिए टू सर्टेन लेवल, टू सर्टेन एक्सटेंट यू रिक्वायर मोर स्किल्स. सो दैट इज वाई दैट प्रोडक्ट फेचेज मोर प्राइस. That product fetches more price. More skills are required. So the labor dependent on that, they will demand more wages.
So the manufacturing में unskilled labor भी work करती है.
हाँ, अनस्किल्ड लेबर भी वर्क करते हैं, यू आर राइट एज सच. So those kinds of items will be cheaper as compared to those manufactured items which requires more skills. तो इट्स वेरी, देखो एक चीज बहुत सिंपल है. आप जैसे सपोज यू आर अटेंडिंग अ लेक्चर ऑफ 5th क्लास मैथ्स, 1 घंटे का लेक्चर, ठीक है. It may be free or they may charge you 100, 200, 500 rupees. But if you are attending a lecture on some international issues delivered by some high profile professor, it may cost you too much. ठीक है. And why is this so? The one reason is demand and supply also. The person who is delivering lecture on this international relations, there are very few professors. Why very few professors? Because to attain that level of skill, everyone cannot attain. So that is why he demand more wages. And the person who is giving 5th class math, there are a lot of persons who can give that lecture. Less skill is required. So he charges less, and that's why the product is cheaper. Skills level से related है such. And skills से then demand and supply related. The labor which will require, the activity which will require less skills, definitely will have more labor into that, more supply of labor and less wages.
Sir, in software industry, the engineers who are working in India, so and the engineers who are working in Silicon Valley, so at certain moment they are having the same level of skills.
At certain level, they right.
After the graduation.
Right.
So they will pick up the skills when they enter into the Silicon Valley.
Right.
So they will be getting some opportunity to get that skill, right?
Right.
So you cannot say completely on skill, right? Because
if the movement of labor becomes totally free, then again the wages will become same. There are restrictions. There are restrictions. That is why there is difference. There are restrictions. That is why there is difference. Otherwise, whatever is the price of the product, there are 2-3 factors. The most important is skill. What skills is required to produce that? The other is how much capital investment, certain level of demand and supply. To produce agriculture, you require very few skills. So there are a lot of labor. Labor supply is too much, and they are able to fetch low wages. But to produce other items, you require more skills. When you require more skills, you demand more wages. The product has higher price, and then you say कि more value addition.
मैन्चेस्टर गुड्स है वो सर चीपर प्राइस पे जाके वो हैंडलूम प्रोड्यूसर है खादी आइटम.
हाँ, right. So he is saying कि manufactured items cheaper थे. Manufactured items, जो भी आपके दिमाग में डाउट आ रहा है आप पूछ सकते हो. हाँ, एक सेकंड, लेट मी क्लैरिफाई फर्स्ट. He said कि during my British rule, manufactured items from Britain were cheaper as compared to our handicrafts and other handlooms. You are perfectly right, but then I say that कि value addition done by British labor was still very high. The reason is one labor producing so much of items. One labor producing so much of items, output is more, he was getting more wages. So per labor value addition was much more because as compared to per labor value addition here, and per labor value addition there was much more because of the contribution of machines, technology, machines and other things. Per unit productivity you can say. So you think about here one labor is producing one item, there one labor is producing 10 items in one day. So the value addition of the labor you will calculate 10 items, the price of 10 items. So और well, ये उस समय भी ट्रू था, अभी भी ट्रू और आगे भी ट्रू रहेगा. If you require more skills to produce something, you will fetch more money, and then we will say that the value addition of that labor is high. So our value addition was very less because we are mostly involved into agriculture and primary sector activities. Value addition less, income less, per capita income less, economic growth was almost negligible. थर्ड भी ऑलमोस्ट हमने इसी में डिस्कस कर दिया. सपोज एक हैवी वेट बॉक्सर है, एक हैवी वेट बॉक्सर है एंड यू अलाउ ए स्मॉल किड टू फाइट विथ हिम, तो क्या होगा रिजल्ट आपको पता ही है ना. सो व्हाट शुड आइडियली डू इज you should first nurture that kid, and once he is grown up and strong, then you should allow fight. Now we were producing the goods with handmade goods, they were doing machine made goods, and then they imposed free trade on India. When they imposed free trade on India, their goods was produced by machines, it was much cheaper, as you said, and those goods displaced the goods here produced by handmade, and a lot of artisans, handicrafts, and these people lost their jobs, and they crowded into agriculture, creating disguised unemployment. So whatever certain level of industry we had, we lost them because free trade was forcefully imposed on us, and our goods was replaced by their manufactured items which were quite cheaper. So these things basically stagnated our economic growth became less than 1%. So that's why when we got independence, so most of the data which I will be saying 1950 का है, not exactly 1947, but doesn't matter as such, ठीक है. When we got independence, we adopted a mixed economic model of development more tilted towards socialist patterns, ठीक है. We adopted a mixed economic model of development more tilted towards socialist pattern. So why we choose a socialist pattern or development of model? मेरे को याद है. और कोई? हाँ, इनइक्वालिटी तो अभी भी है काफ़ी. हाँ, राइट, यू आर राइट. हिस्ट्री में तो आप ऐसे भी स्ट्रांग हो. सो 2-3 फैक्टर्स थे. फर्स्ट थिंग, वी वर एक्सप्लॉयटेड 200 years by the Britishers. Few private individuals, Britishers exploited us for 200 years. So when we got independent, we didn't want to again give our economy into the hands of few capitalists, few private businessmen. So the thinking at that time was socialist. People of India wanted the factors of production to be controlled by government. It was a general thinking among the people also. Plus the top leaders who had to decide the economic policy, they also had a strong faith on socialist model. Simple. They also had a strong faith on socialist model. So we adopted a socialist pattern of development, not exactly socialist, a mixed economic model. But in mixed economic model, we said that most of the factors of production important were controlled by government. So when we adopted a mixed economic model of development, then if we are adopting mixed economic model of development, that means some sectors will be controlled by government and some by private individuals. In certain industries, private sector will be allowed. In certain industries, government will be allowed. So when government is adopting mixed economic model of development, it must announce to the general public that which sectors will be open for private and which sectors will be open for government. ये बताना पड़ेगा ना. जैसे आज की डेट almost everything is allowed for private sector also. But at that time, we said that we will be adopting mixed economic model of development. So government must inform to the general public that which sectors will be open for private and which sectors will not be open. So to tell this thing to the general public, we used to announce industrial policy resolution, IPR 1948. First IPR came in 1948, and this IPR divided all the industries in India into broadly 4 categories. देखो, I don't expect कि now UPSC will ever ask कि इसमें 4 categories क्या थी और कौन-कौन. I don't expect, ठीक है. So आपको भी ये briefly पता होना चाहिए कि ये थी. ये नहीं कि आप रटने लगो कि A में कौन था, B में कौन था, ऐसे याद रखने की जरूरत नहीं. But you should know that there was a categorization of industries. Certain sectors allowed for private and certain. चक्कर क्या है? हाँ, क्या चक्कर, क्यों, मतलब ऐसा क्यों हो रहा है? कुछ क्लास वास थी कहीं? अरे ऐसे ही मैं जानना चाह रहा हूँ, कौन लेट छोड़ा? अच्छा इसके पहले, अच्छा 5:30 पे छोड़ा। जैसा तो मेरे साथ है 5:20 पे। कोई बात नहीं। इंडस्ट्रियल तो उसके बाद आप इंडस्ट्रियल पॉलिसी रिजोल्यूशन। सो थ्रू दिस अच्छा, डू वी अनाउंस IPR टुडे ऑल्सो और नॉट? We don't do. What is the need today? When we have opened all the sectors for private, what is the purpose of IPR? We don't announce IPR. The last IPR came in 1991. After that, we opened the economy. We opened every sector for private enterprises and we didn't announce IPR. So this was an industrial policy that where private will be present, where government will be present, that was the requirement to announce these IPRs. अब क्या है, if any policy change happens ना, we announce it on runtime basis. कुछ भी change होता है, we upload the document on Ministry of Commerce website, DPIIT. ठीक है, तो अब जैसे कोई FDI में चेंज हुआ, we announce that, but at that time we used to change our policies after 4, 5, 6 years, and we used to announce that in this sector private will be there, or in this sector private will not be there. So first category was state monopoly. इसमें we had 3 enterprises. कौन कौन सी? एटॉमिक एनर्जी। देखो, अगर आपको सही से ये चीज़ पढ़ना है इकोनॉमी में, तो आपको मैं एक स्टेप बताता हूँ जिससे आपका एफर्ट कम लगेगा। व्हाट यू डू इज, डोंट रीड बिफोर द क्लास, मतलब पढ़ के आने की जरूरत नहीं है बुक्स, ठीक है, बट मस्ट रीड आफ्टर द क्लास, ठीक है। तो क्लास से जाके ना एक बार जैसे ऐसे मान लो अगर ये चैप्टर खुद से पढ़ना चाहोगे तो हो सकता है कंफ्यूज रहो, समझ में नहीं आया क्या हो रहा नहीं हो रहा, बट वंस यू अटेंड द क्लास एंड देन यू विल गो एंड रीड, तो विद इन हाफ एन आवर, 1 घंटे आपको लगेगा और फुल पूरा रिवाइज हो जाएगा। सो बेस्ट इज, एंड डेली का डेली, ठीक है, पढ़ते रहोगे तो इट विल नॉट बी अ बर्डनसम। सो फर्स्ट कैटेगरी वाज स्टेट मोनोपोली, एटॉमिक एनर्जी, रेलवे, आर्म्स एंड एम्यूनिशन। सेकेंड कैटेगरी बेसिक इंडस्ट्रीज। थर्ड regulated industries, and fourth private. State monopoly means no private enterprise in these 3 sectors is possible. No private sector can remain in these 3 sectors. Only government company will be there in these 3 sectors, state monopoly. Basic industries, there were around 6-7 industries: coal, iron, steel, oil and gas, aircraft manufacturing, telephone and telegraph, ठीक है, 7 industries were there. Here ध्यान से differences समझते जाना. Here government said that कि no new private company will come, but if there was a private company before 1947, it was allowed to remain in private hands, but no new private company will come here. But here no private company is possible, and here government said कि no new private company can come, but if Tata Steel was private before 1947, it was allowed to remain in the private hands. But new industries only government can set up, 7 industries. Regulated industries: cement, sugar, paper, automobile, chemicals, fertilizers. Regulated industries, private sector can come, but government can regulate anything regarding where you will be setting up the plants, what will be the production, what will be the pricing. Government can regulate anything. But private sector was also government and private both, but government will regulate this. Private industry, whatever was not here, it was under private sector. That means private sector can enter. Okay, so broadly 4 classifications. अच्छा, then in 1956 क्या हुआ? बताओ बताओ, कोई डाउट है?
बेसिक इंडस्ट्रीज कैन गवर्नमेंट रेगुलेट?
अरे ओनली गवर्नमेंट वाज अलाउड टू प्रेजेंट ना,
ओनली प्राइवेट कंपनीज वर आल्सो अलाउड
1947 के पहले ना।
जो प्राइवेट कंपनीज 1947 से पहले थी वो बेसिक इंडस्ट्रीज में आ गई,
राइट,
अभी भी प्राइवेट है।
हाँ हाँ,
क्या गवर्नमेंट उनको रेगुलेट करेगी?
ऑफ कोर्स रेगुलेट कर सकती है।
सर प्राइवेट इंडस्ट्री जैसे बेसिक इंडस्ट्री में स्टील वगैरह हो गया, तो ये तो प्राइवेट ही कंपनी थे ना।
Basic industries, government said that ki only new industries can be set up only by government. Those who were there in the private sector, they were allowed to remain private, but there was always a threat of nationalization on those private industries which were here, and some threats of nationalization exactly turned to be true in 1973 when government nationalized the coal sector. And 1973 जो में coal nationalization हुआ, what exactly happened? The private companies which were there before 1947, government took over those companies also. ठीक है, 1956 में we brought another IPR, we changed this. So in 1956 we divided all the industry into 3 categories: Schedule A, Schedule B, Schedule C. So basically we have changed this several times, so no need to remember all this. You just need to know that there was a categorization of industries, certain private was allowed, in certain sector private was not allowed. Schedule C, Schedule B, Schedule C, 1956 IPR. What we did basically is we merged these two, Schedule A, Schedule B, Schedule C, broadly. Further it was again changed, and last IPR came in 1991. So there was a classification of industries. Now we implemented first 5-year plan, है ना, 51 to 56 we implemented the first 5. In the first 5-year plan, the major focus was on agriculture and transport and communication. So when I say कि in the first 5-year plan, major focus was on agriculture and transport and communication. So what do you understand by this statement? Government
will make such policies to enhance the output of these sectors primarily.
And the resources, where it will come? So government, I said कि first 5-year plan there was a major focus on agriculture, transport and communication. So government with its vast budgetary resources, it allocated a majority of the budgetary resources for agricultural schemes, various dams, ठीक है, and transport and communication. So when government says its focus is this, focus basically happens in terms of financial resources, and government's financial resources, budgetary resources. So government allocated around 30 to 40% of budgetary resources for this, which was a major allocation. ठीक है, plus it framed policy, it created dams, Bhakra, Nangal, Hirakund. So first 5-year plan, major focus was on agriculture industries, but as such there was not any particular model of development. ठीक है, कोई इकोनॉमिक मॉडल नहीं था as such. We said that we will be focusing more on agriculture and industries, agriculture and transport and communication, but as such there was not any particular economic model, because we didn't get much time to prepare the 5-year plan. So first 5-year plan we just generally focused on agriculture. But once we implemented this first 5-year plan, once we implemented the first 5-year plan, there was a discussion going on in the government that what should be our future model of development, what should be our future strategy for economic growth. मैं पूछ नहीं रहा हूँ, ठीक है, ऐसा कन्फ्यूजन होता है क्या कि मैं पूछ रहा हूँ, मैं बता रहा हूँ, ऐसा होता है? हाँ, चलो कोई बात नहीं, इससे पता चलता है ना कौन कॉन्सेंट्रेट करके सुन रहा. हाँ, so there was a discussion going on after we implemented the first 5-year plan. The government was thinking that what particular strategy we should adopt to increase the income of the country, to increase the growth of the economy, what should be the future model of development. And basically there were 2 strategies. There were two thoughts in the government that we should do this or that. Now these two thoughts you must understand properly. One thought propounded by P.C. Mahalanobis, which is also called Calcutta model of development, and the another thought was given by Bombay economists Professor Brahmanand and Mr. Vakil. So Bombay economists, they gave certain idea or strategy. It is called Bombay plan, Bombay model of development, and there was Calcutta model of development. And so you must understand ki what was the difference basically. थोड़ा टेक्निकल है, ध्यान से सुनना आप. So when we got independence, the background was we had less financial resources. ठीक है, we had less financial resources. And what about labor resources? Sufficient amount of, ठीक है, sufficient unemployed people were there. Then regarding consumption and capital goods, regarding capital goods, we were producing on our own or we were importing capital goods. 70 to 80% of the capital goods requirement we were importing. And regarding consumption goods, the level of consumption in India was very less. Per capita consumption was very less. ठीक है. So we were surviving on very less consumption. So when we got independence, there was problem of consumption goods also, agricultural goods plus other consumable items. We were producing less items. And we were producing capital goods also very less. So we were importing capital goods. And consumption level, we were surviving on a very less level of consumption. So there was problem on both consumption goods and capital goods. And we had huge number of labor and less financial resources. This is the background at independence. So now what P.C. Mahalanobis Calcutta strategy, what he is saying is, एकदम पिन ड्रॉप साइलेंस करके सुनना और 10 मिनट बाद मैं आपको डाउट पूछने का मौका दूंगा. ठीक है, तो जो डाउट होगा आप नोट कर लेना. P.C. Mahalanobis said that कि government with its vast financial resources should set up huge capital goods industries. Government with its vast financial budgetary resources should set up huge capital goods industries through its PSUs. Capital goods industries, heavy industries, मतलब steel factories. So P.C. Mahalanobis is saying that government with its budgetary resources, financial resources, should set up huge steel factories, basic industries, capital goods industries through PSUs. Through PSUs, these basic goods industries, capital goods industries will produce steel with the help of the output of this industry, which the government will set up. With the help of the output of this industry, we will be able to set up other factories in the economy. भाई ट्रैक्टर की फैक्ट्री लगाने के लिए यू रिक्वायर स्टील. So he is saying that government with its vast budgetary resources should set up huge capital goods industries. The output of this industry will help in the development of other industries in the economy. Those other industries will start producing goods which will increase our production. Government, P.C. Mahalanobis is saying that government with its vast budgetary resources should set up heavy capital goods industries. With this heavy capital goods industry, whatever will be the output, will be able to set up other downstream industries. These are downstream industries. जैसे आप geography में पढ़ते हो ना, upstream, downstream. So this will help in the establishment of other downstream industries, and this downstream industries will help in increasing the production of other goods in the economy. If we will set up a steel factory, with this steel factory we will be able to set up a TV factory. This TV factory will help in the production of TVs in the economy. To set up any factory, you require the output of this factory. ठीक है. So he said that कि if we want to reduce our imports of capital goods, if we want to be independent. We should not be dependent on import of capital goods. So let's set up a steel factory. This steel factory will help in the establishment of other factories. The other factories will then produce consumption goods also and capital goods also. If they will produce capital goods, then it will further increase the production of consumption goods. Steel factory से tractor factory बनेगा. Tractor factory will produce tractor and then that tractor will start increasing the production of consumption. So it will help in the establishment of capital goods and then that capital goods will increase the production of consumption goods also. So he is saying that government should focus on building huge capital goods industries with the budgetary resources. This will resolve the problem of import of capital goods. This will resolve the problem of import of capital goods. And in future, so right now he is saying that if government will set up huge factories, it will resolve the problem of capital goods. And in future, when these industries will get set up, it will also resolve the problem of consumption goods also. Because future mein to it will ultimately lead to production of consumption goods also. And he is saying the present problem of consumption goods, like this will take 5 to 10 years time period maybe. ठीक है ना? This will take by government will set up a steel factory, then it will produce steel. With that steel factory, TV factory will set up, and then after 5-6 years this TV production will start. So he is saying if government will presently start focusing on heavy capital goods industries, the present problem of capital goods will be resolved, and in future the problem of consumption goods will also be resolved. We will be able to produce much more consumption goods. But the present problem of consumption goods, because consumption level was also less, the present problem of consumption goods, let the village and cottage industries handle on their own. Government will not much focus presently on consumption goods. Let the village and cottage industries, small scale, let them focus on their own. But government should totally focus on building heavy capital goods industries. It will resolve the present problem of capital goods and it will also resolve the future problem of consumption goods. ठीक है? Now, when we say capital goods industries, do you know why we say it capital goods industry? दो context में होता है. Capital goods industry means you are setting up huge factories. You are setting up huge factories which will be producing capital goods. Now, huge factories when you are setting up, it requires huge capital, huge money. To set up a steel plant, you require huge money. So, capital goods industries require huge capital, in the sense it requires huge money, and it starts giving return after a long time period. Whenever you are going to put much more capital starting, so it starts earning profit after a longer period. Long gestation hota hai. Heavy capital goods industries ka gestation period, that means the profit starts coming after a long time, because you put huge money and to recover that money takes a long time, and profit comes after a considerable time period only. And heavy capital goods industries require less labor as such. Whatever amount of capital you are putting, in terms of that capital, the requirement of labor is less. क्या इसलिए बोलते हैं capital goods industry, more capital, less labor. So this was the thought of PC Mahal now, this Calcutta strategy. Now what Bombay economists are saying, Bombay model, they are saying that we have huge labor resources and less financial resources. So they are saying that government should focus on promoting labor based industries. Government should focus on promoting labor based industries like toys, garments, ठीक है, toys, garments, leather, footwear, agriculture, processing. So Bombay model is suggesting that the government with its vast resources should spend into rural infrastructure, should spend into rural areas. This will help in motivating small entrepreneurs to set up labor based industries. To set up labor based industries. See, Calcutta model is saying that the government with its financial resources should set up their own PSUs for capital goods. But Bombay model is not suggesting that government should set up labor based industries. No. Bombay model is suggesting that the government should just spend into agriculture and rural sector, and it will automatically motivate a lot of rural entrepreneurs, small entrepreneurs, to set up labor based industries. For example, if government will spend into rural infrastructure, road, electricity, it may attract a small entrepreneurs to set up a processing facility. It may attract a small entrepreneur to set up a leather or footwear industry or cotton textile. So Bombay model is not through PSUs. Bombay model is not through PSU. Bombay model is just suggesting that you spend a lot into agriculture and rural sector. If you will set up, spend a lot into rural infrastructure, it will attract and give some policy initiatives, policy motives for rural entrepreneurs to set up their own industries. So it will attract a lot of small entrepreneurs. These small entrepreneurs will enter into labor-based industries, which requires very less capital and huge amount of labor. This requires very less capital, and small entrepreneurs will be motivated because these industries require very less money and it requires huge labor, which we already have. And so Bombay model is suggesting that if government will spend into rural infrastructure, it will attract small entrepreneurs to set up labor-based industries, basically of mass consumption item. So rural laborers will be attracted to set up industries to produce radio, TV, bicycles, shoes, toys. These are mass consumption items, and these are also called wage goods. Why these are called wage goods? Because the wage earner, the labor employed in a toy factory, will create the demand for the toys. A labor employed in a garments factory, whatever wages the labor will earn, through that wages he will again purchase the garments or the products which he himself is producing. These are called wage goods. Wage goods means the wage earner creates the demand for the goods which he himself produces. A labor employed in Maruti plant, so Maruti is not a wage good model because the wage earner will not create the demand for Maruti. Okay? So Bombay model is just suggesting that government should spend a lot on rural and agriculture sector. It will attract a lot of small entrepreneurs to set up labor-based industries which require more labor, which is quite available and cheaper, and less capital. And these small entrepreneurs will start setting up labor-based industries, and the labor working in these industries will create the demand for the goods which they themselves will be producing, basically mass consumption items. Mass consumption items में toys, leather, footwear, garments, TV, bicycle, fridge, AC, ये सब आता है, mass consumption items. But ultimately government adopted the Calcutta model, Calcutta strategy. So government adopted this Calcutta strategy and Bombay plan was ditched. So from the second 5-year plan, 1956 onwards, we have adopted Calcutta strategy for our economic development. Now what has happened because of this is, एक positive इसका ये हुआ that the base of capital goods industries in India, increased a lot. That means earlier we had very few capital goods industries. Now because of government's focus in these sectors, कोई एयरक्राफ्ट ध्यान रखना आप लोग, ठीक है, अब कुछ भी हो सकता है, इलेक्शन का भी टाइम है और सही टाइम मिल गया गवर्नमेंट को भी, ठीक है. So we adopted Calcutta model knowing the fact that आज की इंडिया की सबसे मेजर चैलेंज क्या है, what we are facing is poverty. It is related to unemployment. Poverty is a result, ठीक है, of unemployment. Major challenge, major problem is unemployment, underemployment you can say. Vicious, right. Now you know that at independence we had huge labor resources, cheaper labor resources and less financial resources. Knowing this fact, government adopted Calcutta model which required more financial resources, more capital and less labor. ठीक है. And the fact is, if you will invest 1 rupee into steel sector and 1 rupee into textile sector, if you will invest the same money into textile and garments and steel, whatever number of jobs steel sector generates, with the same amount of investment, textile sector generates 280 times more jobs. ठीक है, 280 times more jobs. Knowing this fact, we adopted Calcutta model, and the result you are seeing. This data was given by your chief economic advisor 3 years back. 3 years back, this data was given by your chief economic advisor Arvind Subramaniam, and when he gave this data, after few months, Modi government released 6,000 crore package for textile industry. Package means various kinds of exemptions, subsidies, promotional schemes. Government released 6,000 crore package for textile and garment, and after 1 year it released around 4,000 crore rupees of package for leather and footwear, the two most labor intensive businesses. ठीक है. So we adopted this Calcutta model.
Why did we adopt this model when it had so many problems?
अच्छा, तो the answer is, if we would have adopted Bombay model, if we would have adopted Bombay model, हो सकता है कि आज की कंडीशन उससे भी खराब होती. जो हो चुका यू कैन ऑलवेज एनालाइज कि सर ऐसा हमने क्यों किया. ठीक है, जो हो चुका वी कैन ऑलवेज एनालाइज कि ऐसा हमने क्यों किया, बट कुछ भी हो सकता था. आई एग्री. देखो उस समय क्या था, सेटिंग अप अ ह्यूज कैपिटल गुड्स इंडस्ट्री वाज मोर फैसिनेटिंग, दैट इंडिया विल बी इंडिपेंडेंट ऑफ कैपिटल गुड्स इंपोर्ट, मशीन्स, दैट इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन का जो उस समय फेज था ना, तो दिस सेटिंग अप अ मशीन बिल्डिंग इंडस्ट्री वाज मोर, यू कैन से लुक्रेटिव, मोर future prospects thinking this thing. And again in this case also Nehru had more trust on this economist, or economist तो नहीं थे, basically he was a physicist, PC Mahalanobis. He had more trust on him. अब जैसे कोई आज के डेट में मोदी जी को कोई प्रपोज करे, ठीक है, इसमें हंसने की मतलब कुछ ऐसा क्या नहीं कर सकता क्या प्रपोज, मतलब कि हाँ
सर वो कॉन्टेक्स्ट अलग हो जाता है.
मतलब उनको कोई सजेस्ट करे कि भाई ऐसा करो वैसा करो. अच्छा, ऐसे भी तो मोदी जी ने तो खुद ही डिसाइड किया ना कि अनमैरिड रहेंगे लाइफ लॉन्ग, तो उसमें चलो ठीक है, छोड़ो जाने दो. सो इफ समवन सजेस्ट मोदी जी कि ये करना है, नाउ अ लॉट ऑफ टाइम्स यू मे थिंक ऑफ दैट, रादर देन दैट पर्टिकुलर मॉडल, the person also becomes important who is suggesting, है ना. So this also played a major role, this also played a major role, and maybe Modi ji उधर गुजरात बॉम्बे रीजन के हैं, so he trusted in that model more, that's why he gave this package for textile and footwear. ठीक है. So we adopted Calcutta model. Now what did this Calcutta model do? अब ध्यान से सुनना आप. अच्छा, अभी तक कोई डाउट इस बॉम्बे एंड कलकत्ता मॉडल में? देखिए यही फायदा होता है, जब आप बहुत कॉन्सेंट्रेट करके सुनते हो ना तो फालतू के डाउट्स नहीं आते हैं. हाँ, देखो एक चीज ये हमेशा ध्यान रखना कि आई कैन ऑल्सो बी रॉन्ग. ठीक है ना, आई कैन ऑल्सो, मैं बोल दिया कि देखो मैं अपने परसेप्शन बोला, देखो ऐसा क्वेश्चन नहीं आ सकता है, बट एनीथिंग कैन हैपन इन दिस वर्ल्ड एंड यूपीएससी कैन आस्क एनीथिंग. बट ऑन माई पास्ट एक्सपीरियंस, जितना मैंने यूपीएससी का एक्सपीरियंस किया, उस एक्सपीरियंस पे आई एम सेइंग दैट इफ यूपीएससी हैज टू आस्क क्वेश्चन, they will not ask कि कलकत्ता मॉडल में ऐसा क्यों था, they will just ask that post independence when we adopted capital intensive model of development, व्हाट वर इट्स इम्पैक्ट, ठीक है, इस तरह से पूछ सकते हो ऐसे, नॉट वेरी स्पेसिफिक कि कलकत्ता मॉडल में टर्मिनोलॉजी देके जनरली दे डोंट आस्क अस, बट व्हाट वर द मॉडल ऑफ डेवलपमेंट, डिस्कस द इकोनॉमिक स्ट्रेटजी विच वी अडॉप्टेड पोस्ट इंडिपेंडेंस फॉर द डेवलपमेंट, वैसे कर सकते हैं.
Issued the 6,000 crore amount for textile industries and footwear industries. What if we had at that point of time enough textile and footwear industries? तब भी क्या वो मतलब टेक्सटाइल में इन्वेस्ट करते हैं?
अगर उस समय ऐसा होता,
नहीं 3 साल पहले.
हाँ 3 साल पहले ही गेव अस 6,000 crore पैकेज.
For textile. अगर हमारे पास enough industries होती उस टेक्सटाइल की, चाहे वो कितनी लेबर इंटेंसिव है,
राइट,
तब भी वो फिर टेक्सटाइल
हो सकता है फिर किसी और में देते
लेबर.
जो लेबर को प्रमोट करे मोर. देखो अभी आप और आगे का सुन लो स्टोरी, मे बी योर क्वेश्चंस विल ऑलरेडी बी क्लैरिफाइड, क्योंकि आगे से भी ये रिलेटेड है थोड़ा. आप क्या पूछ रहे थे?
My question was सर कि टेक्सटाइल इंडस्ट्रीज में सर 6,000 करोड़ इन्वेस्ट किया, तो सर हमारी
इन्वेस्ट किया नहीं, गवर्नमेंट गेव 6,000 crore ऑफ इंसेंटिव्स टू द टेक्सटाइल सेक्टर हियर. फॉर एग्जांपल, जैसे लेट मी गिव यू एन एग्जांपल. प्रोविडेंट फंड करता है, ठीक है, प्रोविडेंट फंड करता है. नाउ एम्प्लॉयर ऑल्सो गिव्स 12% एंड एम्प्लॉय ऑल्सो गिव्स 12%, सुने हो गए है ना. तो गवर्नमेंट में से दैट कि इफ एनी बिजनेसमैन क्रिएट्स अ टेक्सटाइल कंपनी, और ठीक है, द एम्प्लॉयर कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन दैट गवर्नमेंट विल गिव, तो देन द एम्प्लॉयर्स विल बी मोर मोटिवेटेड टू सेट अप दिस इंडस्ट्री, और सर्टेन टैक्स एग्जम्पशंस इस तरह से देते हैं. हाँ,
तो सर वो जो एग्रीकल्चर बेस्ड इकोनॉमी, तो सर फार्मर्स के लिए इन्वेस्ट करते हैं तो वो ज़्यादा प्रोडक्टिव रहता है, तो सर अपना मुझे सर टेक्सटाइल
फार्मर्स के लिए भी कर रहे हैं हम लोग, बहुत कुछ कर रहे हैं. फार्मर्स
सर वो
नहीं कर रहे हैं. सी इंडिया in the first 5-year plan we focused on agriculture, then we neglected our agriculture for 60 years, and then since last 4 years we have again started focusing on agriculture. May not be the best way, but we have increased our focus and resources on agriculture sector a lot. So we first 5 years we focused on agriculture, and this 5 years we have focused on agriculture. Otherwise for the 60 years it has been ignored, and that is why you are seeing the various challenges in agriculture sector. ये पूरा फिलॉसफी और पूरा धीरे धीरे स्टेप बाय स्टेप आपको क्लियर हुआ ये कैसे हुआ ये सब सारा चीज. अरे जॉबलेस ग्रोथ अभी हम पढ़ाएंगे. हाँ, ऑफ कोर्स जोड़ सकते हो एकदम. अभी ये आगे डिस्कस होगा, अभी आप सुन लो फिर आप पूछना हो, ये आप ऐड कर सकते हो इसमें. नाउ व्हेन गवर्नमेंट with its vast resources set up huge capital goods industry, they didn't have resources to spend into the rural sector, agriculture sector, and wherever government focused, that sector created very few jobs. That sector created very few jobs. So most of the government resources went into heavy capital goods industries. It required very few labor, and most of the labor force remained unemployed. Most of the labor force remained unemployed, and government didn't spend into rural infrastructure. When I say government didn't spend into rural infrastructure, इसका कहने का मतलब ये है कि आज भी हमारे यहाँ इलेक्ट्रिसिटी नहीं आई है, आज भी बहुत जगह रोड्स नहीं है, आज भी हमारे पास इरिगेशन फैसिलिटी नहीं है. आई मीन टू से दीज थिंग्स. आज भी हमारे यहाँ एग्रीकल्चरल मंडीज आर वेरी फ्यू, 50-60 किलोमीटर्स पे एक मंडी. दिस इज रूरल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर. So government whatever resources it had, it set up huge capital goods industry. Benefit क्या हुआ कलकत्ता मॉडल का? The base of capital goods industries increased a lot. We are exporting capital goods, ठीक है. But government focused on capital goods industry. It required very few labor, more resources, more capital, and most of the labor force remained unemployed. Most of the labor force remained unemployed, and these unemployed labor force, since we didn't spend into rural infrastructure, they were not able to create their own industries also. Government ignored the rural infrastructure, so these labor was not able to create their own smaller industries, because if you are not getting electricity, which kind of industry will you create? If you don't have the proper roads or markets, So government put all its resources into capital goods industry, rural sector totally ignored, and the sector in which government entered, that sector created very few jobs. Most of the labor force in India remained unemployed. Now the labor force which entered into capital intensive PSUs, this labor force was highly protected in the sense no accountability of work, promotion was fixed, and this few labor force which got jobs into government sector, they acquired power and money, certain level of corruption, power and money, they acquired power and money. So government created jobs for very few people. Most of the labor force remained unemployed, and these few people who entered into government sector, they have exploited power and money, and most of the labor force who remained outside the government sector, they didn't have any other opportunities. They have always wasted their time and energy to enter into a very small government sector. They have wasted their time and energy, a huge human resource. जैसे आपके यहाँ एक टॉपिक है इकोनॉमी में, मोबिलाइजेशन ऑफ रिसोर्सेज, ठीक है, मोबिलाइजेशन ऑफ रिसोर्सेज. आई डोंट टीच एवरी टॉपिक सेपरेटली, ठीक है, आई डोंट टीच एवरी टॉपिक सेपरेटली, ऑटोमेटिकली इन सारे टॉपिक्स में कवर्ड होगा एज सच. नाउ व्हेन वी अडॉप्टेड कैलकाटा मॉडल, डू यू थिंक दैट वी exploited or utilized our resources properly? Nahi. We had huge labor resources, we didn't care for that labor resources, and we means government entered into a capital intensive business, and most of the labor resources remained as such. And where government entered, it created very few jobs, and there was no job opportunity available for the rest of the youth. They have wasted a lot of their time and energy entering into this very small government sector. आपको लगता होगा कि गवर्नमेंट में इतनी जॉब्स आ रही हैं, बट कंपेरेटिवली एज पर द इकोनॉमी, द गवर्नमेंट सेक्टर इज वेरी स्मॉल. Even if government adopted socialist model, if government themselves would have entered into labor intensive PSUs, then it would have been able to create much more jobs. So most of the government resources went into those industries. It was not able to spend into electricity, rural infrastructure, and it was not able to create too much jobs because it was a capital intensive business. So most of the labor force remained unemployed, and it has resulted in huge unemployment problem. And the present problem of unemployment is still linked to that model, because agriculture labor intensive hai. There are a lot of labor. So agriculture, we focus in the first 5-year plan, and then we have ignored agriculture. Doesn't mean कि government didn't spend a single rupee in agriculture. That means the focus was not on agriculture. And now these last 3-4 years we have started focusing on agriculture, but not in a very efficient way. We will be discussing कि क्यों ये, why I am saying this statement कि not in a very efficient way. So this is one of the major result of the Mahalanobis model. ठीक है, यहाँ पे गवर्नमेंट क्लर्क की जॉब आती है और इंजीनियर्स और पीएचडी के लोग भी अप्लाई करते हैं, जो भी है, ठीक है. सो दिस इज नॉट द सेम इन अदर कंट्रीज ऑल्सो, एंड ट्रस्ट मी, if there would have not been corruption in government sector, whatever number of people fighting for government jobs, there would have been less. अगर ये जो the public which entered into government sector, if they would have been made accountable for their work, if there would have been very less corruption, then a lot of people would not have fought or wasted their time and energy to enter into this government sector. So it was a problem with the government that it was not able to ensure accountability in the government sector regarding jobs, regarding promotion, regarding salary. इसका एग्जाम्पल ये है कि हमारे एक बहुत क्लोज रिलेटिव थे, जूनियर इंजीनियर इन इरिगेशन डिपार्टमेंट, ठीक है, सैलरी तो बहुत कम ही रही होगी, ठीक है, और वाराणसी में उनकी हवेली है 25 करोड़ की, ठीक है. सो When a person with less salary, he is able to create such a wealth, then all the people outside the government sector, what they are seeing is there is so much money and power involved, so they have wasted their time and energy coming here, and anyway they didn't have any opportunities in other areas. Why? Because government didn't spend into rural sector. ठीक है. So if you have ensured accountability, तो शायद ऐसा नहीं होता है. So post 1947, when we adopted this capital intensive model, this strategy which we adopted after independence, it is also termed as ISI. वो वाला ISI नहीं. Import, post 1950 we adopted the industrial strategy, import, substitution, industrialize. Import, substitution, industrialization. That means substituting the imports, because at that time India was dependent on import. So substituting the imports with domestic industrialization. Now to follow this strategy, substituting the imports of capital goods and other goods by domestic industrialization, what we did is, to support this strategy, what we did is, before 1947 free trade was forced on us. Post 1947, to follow this strategy of domestic industrialization, we created huge trade barriers. Trade barriers, and mainly two things come. One is quota restriction, quantitative restriction, the other is tariff restrictions. We created import duties around 200%. To support our domestic industries, to support domestic industrialization, substituting the imports, we imposed around 200% import on an average. We imposed 200% import duties, and we restricted through quota restrictions. We imposed trade restrictions through trade barriers, quota restrictions. So quota restrictions plus tariff restrictions we both imposed to support our domestic industrialization. So it was a good strategy as such, because anyway when your domestic industries are not so developed, are in a beginning stage, then you should protect your industries by creating this trade barrier. So it was fine, and this Calcutta model also helped in domestic setting up huge capital goods industries. See, basically this model which we adopted in 1956, capital intensive model, to a certain extent it worked good till Nehru. The major problem started happening during Indira Gandhi. Till Nehru it still worked fine. We were able to increase the base of capital goods industries. We will be able to set up a lot of domestic capital goods industries. The major challenges we started facing after 65, 66. अच्छा, we had thought that this Calcutta model, ये trickle down समझते हो effect. This Calcutta model had thought that कि once we will set up huge capital goods industries, trickle down अभी बताते हैं आपको. Once we will set up capital goods industries, they will generate profit. These PSUs will generate profit, and this PSU's profit is called government savings, government surplus. देखो इकोनॉमी में जैसे आई एम सेइंग कि 30% सेविंग्स है, इन्वेस्टमेंट एंड सेविंग्स, तो 30% सेविंग मीन्स वॉट एवर वी आर गेटिंग 30% इज सरप्लस. नाउ सम इज गवर्नमेंट सेक्टर सेविंग, some is private sector, some is household sector, so total 30% saving. So government, Calcutta model thought that if government will set up these PSUs, in future they will generate profit, they will generate saving surplus, and with that saving they will be able to set up or spend into rural infrastructure also. With that profit, dividend, they will be able to spend into rural infrastructure also. But what happened exactly is, these PSUs, rather than generating surpluses, they turn into losses, and rather than giving dividend, government from the tax resources had to fund their investment plans by giving their budgetary resources. Because of the inefficiencies, these PSUs, rather than making profit and giving dividend and that money government is spending in other sectors, जैसे हम लोग बोलते हैं ना कि we had a top down approach. We focused on industry and then we thought that this industrial sector surplus savings will be used to pump the rural economy. But what happened, this industrial sector turned into losses and even their investment plan was funded by government's budgetary resources. Tax was more than 50% at that time. And acha, this period inflation was high or low? High inflation. Now, Calcutta model had also expected that, when government will be setting up PSUs, heavy capital goods industries, it will help in the establishment of the downstream industries, of other industries. Now the downstream industry means tractor factory or some AC, TV, bicycle factory. The so Calcutta model said that if government will set up huge capital goods industry, it will help in the establishment of other downstream industry, which will ultimately increase the production of consumption and capital goods. But in India, the downstream industries were never set up. Never set up means not in large quantities. Very few downstream industries got established. It was not established as per the plan which government thought that a lot of downstream industries will set up. And why downstream industries didn't get set up in that period? The reason is, since most of the people remained unemployed, their wages was very less. The wages was very less. The demand for the goods which could have been produced from the downstream industries, that never came up in the economy. The demand for the goods which could have been produced from the downstream industries, that never came up in the economy. Dekho, it's a cyclical process. 300 years back, we were sitting idle or we were doing very less work. We were doing very less work, so we were getting less. So our demand was also less. So when our demand was less, the production was also less. If we can all be employed, we will get wages, we will demand more, and then we will produce more also. This is the process of becoming rich or increasing the production. Now when we adopted Calcutta model, we employed very few people, so only those people got wages. Most of the economy remained unemployed, people remained unemployed, so they didn't create the demand for those goods which could have been produced from the downstream industries. So downstream industries, no private businessman was willing to set up those downstream industries because the demand was very less. But inflation was also very high. Inflation was also very high. The reason is, एक तो cost push वाला reason है, एक तो cost push वाला reason है, supply inefficiencies. If your business is inefficient, now government PSUs were doing a lot of production, those were inefficient, so cost of production was high. Now we had already protected our economy through trade barriers. The Indian economy started becoming inefficient because most of the sectors were controlled by government, and in government there is no motivation to become more efficient because salary and promotion fixed. Up to फिर भी we are trying to ensure, but think about 50-60 years back. So salary promotion fixed है, no motivation to become efficient. So what happened? देखो हमने कैसे किया है, how we basically kill this economy. We prevented the foreign competition by creating trade barriers. एक चीज हुआ. And so government established its PSUs here, and we protected the government PSUs by not allowing private sector in those. Some of the students asked that कि sir ठीक है, government said that कि they will be producing steel. ठीक है, if government wants to produce steel, it's fine. But why government banned private companies from steel production? इसका तो कोई logic नहीं है. If government wants to do development, ठीक है, government should set up industries. But why government is preventing any private enterprise to set up a steel factory? The reason was, if government wanted to develop this economy on its own through PSUs, if they would have allowed private sector, then there would have been threat on the government PSUs itself. Then there would have been a threat on government PSU also. So outside competition we killed by creating trade barriers, and domestic competition we didn't allow domestic private companies to enter into this. So only there was PSUs, and only there are PSUs, that means जैसे National Thermal Power Corporation NTPC. Now it produces power. It purchases turbine and generator from Bharat Heavy Electricals Limited, again a PSU. Now Bharat Heavy Electricals Limited, when it is producing various equipments, it knows that all the power companies in India, they have to purchase from BHEL, because no private company was allowed and no foreign company can sell it here because of 200% import duty. So when BHEL knows that their products are bound to sell, no motivation to innovate new products and no motivation to become efficient. So prices were high. This led to higher inflation. This led to higher inflation. This is one reason. And the other reason is, in a lot of sectors where private was allowed, regulated industries, very few people were allowed to enter into business. So demand was less, but the supply was comparatively lesser. Whatever was the demand, private businessmen in private sector or regulated industry, they were not allowed to set up industries. अर्ली 1990s में हमारे एक रिलेटिव को स्कूटर खरीदना था, 6 महीने का वेटिंग था, 6 months वेटिंग, बजाज प्रिया की पता नहीं कौन सा स्कूटर था, 6 months वेटिंग। आज अगर आप चाहोगे ना तो 10 कंपनी वाले घर पे आके दे जाएंगे आपको और बोलेंगे कि ले जाओ, EMI पे ले लेना। ये कॉम्पिटिशन। So this resulted in higher inflation, and because of higher inflation, because of inefficient system, our products became costly, and to earn some level of foreign exchange dollars, our products became less competitive, and to earn foreign exchange dollars so that we are able to import certain things, we always devalued our currency. So जितना हमारा economy inefficient होती थी, product prices used to increase. To again support our export, we have always devalued our currency. तो अभी तो $1 से $1 equal to ₹1, it came 31, 33 आ गया। ठीक है, अच्छा। Now when we impose this import substitution industrialization strategy, we created huge trade barriers. That was a good strategy as such, because we should have protected our domestic industries. But वो जो मैंने बॉक्सर का एग्जाम्पल दिया था आपको, बॉक्सर का एक नहीं था, हाँ ठीक है, हाँ, सो शायद वो आई थिंक वो स्टोरी बीच ही में रुक गई, कुछ और किसी ने पूछ लिया। सो व्हेन ही वाज अ यंग चाइल्ड, उसको हमें नर्चर करना चाहिए स्ट्रांग, देन वी शुड अलाउ फाइट, अदरवाइज तो पिट जाएगा, ठीक है। एंड वंस ही हैज बिकम, सपोज वी हैव नर्चर्ड हिम, वंस ही हैज बिकम स्ट्रांग, एंड अगेन इफ यू स्टार्ट protecting him, if you will not allow him to fight, again if you will start protecting him, तो फिर वो अदनान सामी बन जाएगा, ठीक है। He will again become inefficient. If you will not allow him to compete, he will again become inefficient if you will start protecting him. Some sort of the same thing happened with the Indian economy. Before this, free trade was forced on us, ठीक है। Before this, free trade was forced on us. After this, we protected our domestic companies. That was a perfectly fine, because it was in nascent stage, early stage. But in the 20 years period, 47 to 65, 66, we were able to establish a lot of capital goods industries, and 20 years is a sufficient time to stabilize and to become efficient. So after 15 to 20 years, we should have allowed the domestic PSUs to face certain level of competition. We should have allowed our domestic industry to face certain level of competition. ठीक है। And after 20 years of development, rather than allowing the domestic PSUs to face competition, when Indira Gandhi regime came, they gave more protection to these PSUs. She gave more protection to these PSUs, and these PSUs still, they went into huge inefficiencies. They still became more inefficient. A lot of countries in Asia, they became independent during this 1950s. All these economies, they started opening their borders in mid-60s. they started opening their borders in mid-60s. South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, they started opening their borders mid-60s. Their domestic companies faced competition, they became efficient. When they became efficient, they were able to export a lot to the world market. They are called Asian tigers. And we, rather than allowing competition, we took a U-turn, and we further became inefficient. So till here it was still fine, till Nehru it was fine. Most of the problems started happening after 65, 66. Huh? Asian elephant. Because we have huge potential, we just require a little bit of support. Otherwise Indians काफ़ी talented और काफ़ी hard working हैं. Alone not a, we are not good team players, but individually हम बहुत कुछ कर डालते हैं. ठीक है. So what Indira Gandhi did, क्या हो गया भाई? ठीक है सब कुछ? हाँ, क्या नोट कर रहे हो? बीच में स्टेटस चेक करते रहना कहीं वॉर तो नहीं डिक्लेयर हो गया है. ठीक है. आजकल देखो पाकिस्तान कुछ भी कर सकता है. ठीक है, सुनो, मतलब इट इज़ नॉट अ रेस्पॉन्सिबल नेशन आई थिंक. ठीक है, वो रेस्पॉन्सिबल नहीं है पहली बात. अब अगर वो कुछ भी कर सकता है तो इधर भी मोदी और मिस्टर शाह हैं और इलेक्शन का टाइम है, तो यहाँ से भी अब कुछ भी रिटेलिएशन हो सकता है. इसलिए टाइम जो थोड़ा सही नहीं है. चाइना नहीं पड़ेगा. चाइना अपनी इकॉनमी, अपने पैसे के लिए ज़्यादा कंसर्न है रादर देन पाकिस्तान को लगता है कि चाइना विल सपोर्ट. चाइना विल नॉट सपोर्ट. ठीक है, और उसने अपने इंटेंशंस क्लियर कर दी. चाइना के लिए उसकी इकॉनमी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है रादर देन दिस पाकिस्तान और वॉर. देखो फुल फ्लेज वॉर नहीं होगा एज सच, बट टू अ सर्टेन लेवल एस्केलेट हो सकता है सर. टू अ सर्टेन लेवल ज़्यादा नहीं है सच. क्या चीज़? यार बहुत दिन से बैठे बैठे ना जंग लग गया, तो लगता है कि थोड़ा बहुत तो हो जाए तो फिर से एनर्जी. हाँ, तो वॉर डिक्लेयर करके ले आए फिर उसको, और क्या करेंगे. हाँ, इस समय सबसे बदतर कंडीशन है इमरान खान की. सीरियसली आ रहे हैं. मैं कह रहा हूँ कि इमरान खान की सबसे खराब कंडीशन है. कम से कम यहाँ तो हम लोग अपने पीएम को सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं, ठीक है, जो भी है. वहाँ तो पब्लिक उनको एक तरफ खींच रही है, आर्मी अलग ब्लैकमेल उनको करता है, पब्लिक अलग बोलती है. तो इमरान खान की कंडीशन तो बहुत खराब है, इसीलिए वो शांति शांति कर रहे हैं. छोड़ो, इधर आ जाओ. अच्छा, दिस 60 जो रेगुलेटेड इंडस्ट्रीज थी, तो वन वाज दिस स्टेट मोनोपोली, देन बेसिक इंडस्ट्री, तो ओनली गवर्नमेंट वाज अलाउड. Regulated industry, a lot of industries were put under regulated industry. That means government could regulate its production, pricing, and the location of this industry, which is also called license raj. So what is license raj basically? See, we had an act during 1950, Industrial Development and Regulation Act 1951. Industrial Development and Regulation Act 1951. That means if you wanted to set up an industry under regulated category, that means if you want to set up a automobile or cement plant or sugar industry or paper industry, then you required a permission from the government under that act, Industrial Development and Regulation. So you required permission for all the industry under regulated category. And when you required permission, so during that time government used to declare that in every year, in each year, how much and which industries will be set up. So suppose you want us to establish a cement plant. So it was a planned economy, na? Government used to decide that how much goods and services will be produced. समझते हो ना? It was basically government. जैसे आज की डेट में हाउ मच सीमेंट वी प्रोड्यूस एज पर द डिमांड एंड सप्लाई, ठीक है, मार्केट फोर्सेज ऑफ डिमांड एंड सप्लाई determines that how much cement we will produce. So whether I will set up cement plant or not, how I decide? If there is a demand for in the market, I will set up, otherwise I will not. Earlier, before 1991, government used to decide that how much cement plant will be set up. ठीक है, government used to decide, basically government used to determine this demand, and if you want to set up a cement plant under regulated category, you will have to file an application to the government, and government will decide whether there is demand for that or not, and whether you can set up that industry or not. लाइसेंस राज जो पहले था एंड आज की डेट में सी, इफ यू वांट टू सेट अप ए स्टील प्लांट टुडे यू रिक्वायर इन्वायरमेंट एंड फॉरेस्ट क्लियरेंस, है ना? उस समय भी क्लियरेंस थे, तो आज जो आपको क्लियरेंस चाहिए, डोंट यू थिंक इट इज अ लाइसेंस राज? आज भी तो आपको इन्वायरमेंट फॉरेस्ट अंदर क्लियरेंस से चाहिए. तो जो पहले था 1991 के पहले, दैट लाइसेंस राज, एंड टुडेज व्हाट इज द डिफरेंस?
don't give license on the basis of the requirements of the people. लेकिन इंस्पेक्शन बढ़ेगा.
नंबर
ऑफ रेगुलेटेड इंडस्ट्रीज आर आल्सो लिमिटेड.
देखो क्या डिफरेंस आप समझ लो. आज भी आपको चाहिए होता परमिशन. टुडे इफ यू आर सेटिंग अप स्टील प्लांट एंड इफ देयर इज एन एनवायरनमेंट एंड फॉरेस्ट देयर एंड इफ देयर इज एन इम्पैक्ट ऑन एनवायरनमेंट, ठीक है, तो यू सबमिट अ प्लान दैट दिस इज द इम्पैक्ट एंड आई विल बी डूइंग दिस थिंग टू मिनिमाइज और मिटिगेट दैट इम्पैक्ट, ठीक है, ये प्लान आप सबमिट करते हो. गवर्नमेंट कांट से दैट यू कैन नॉट प्रोड्यूस दिस स्टील और पावर. देयर इज नो रिस्ट्रिक्शन ऑन प्रोडक्शन, बट इफ बिकॉज ऑफ दैट प्रोडक्शन दैट इन्वायरमेंट इज गेटिंग डैमेज, तो उस इन्वायरमेंट को प्रोटेक्ट करने के लिए यू सबमिट अ प्लान, बट एज सच देयर इज नो रिस्ट्रिक्शन कि आप नहीं प्रोड्यूस करने पे एज सच देयर इज नो रिस्ट्रिक्शन. सो हाउ मच स्टील प्लांट यू कैन सेट अप कैपेसिटी, it is totally up to you. You can set up 10 million ton, 20 million ton plant, but if there is a forest in that region, you need to take approval that how much afforestation will be doing. तो लेकिन कितना बड़ा और कितना प्रोडक्शन करना है, that is totally up to you today. Before 1991, government used to decide कि how much will be the production, and then when you used to submit the plan, then government used to check that whether there is a requirement for this or not, and then government used to just deny that no, it is not required. So government used to check the demand. As of today, it is market. So जो पहले license राज था, it was not for just environment and forest. It was, so government used to check the requirement whether there is a requirement for this or not. And generally, based on the requirement, government used to declare in advance that this year only 2 million ton steel plant can be set up. That means, so government declared that this year this is the requirement, इतना set up होना चाहिए. Now, if he approached government first for a 1 million ton plant, he will be given approval. If he also applied for 1 million ton plant, he will also get approval. Now, if she applies for 0.5 million ton plants, her approval will automatically be rejected. This was license raj. समझ रहे हो? Now, license raj, how Indian businessmen have exploited this license raj to become monopolistic. And this license raj increased a lot in the Indira Gandhi regime. So what happened? So suppose some factory, government ने बोला कि 2 million ton का capacity का होगा. Now Reliance applied for a license. They created their subsidiaries, and 2-3 their own subsidiaries applied for the license. When the quota is full, so suppose government has decided that 2 million ton plant will be set up this year. With one company they applied for 0.5 million ton, again 1 million ton, again 0.5. Quota is full. Now there is no one else can file an application. They became monopoly. In this way they have been able to become rich, and they have been able to expand their business. So they exploited this license raj with the help of the bureaucrats and ministers to their own advantage. Top 10 richest में आ गया ना? So license Raj has been exploited by few businessmen in India to become monopolistic. Government post independence choose the mixed economic model of development. Nehruji, in principle that model was perfectly fine, but we were not able to implement that model on ground exactly. We adopted mixed economic model thinking that we'll be having best of both the worlds, best of socialism and capitalism. We will be having best of both the worlds. Socialism का best है कि equality, ठीक है, and capitalism का best है कि freedom. Everyone will be having freedom to set up certain enterprises. So we tried best of both, and in a way we got worst of both. Socialism का worst क्या है? Socialism का worst क्या है? Controls. So huge controls started. Huge controls means for every economic activity there was a restriction. Every economic activity there was a restriction. License Raj में था. License Raj basically means you required a license, you required an approval to set up an enterprise, to increase the capacity, to change the product mix, to import the raw material. For every kind of economic activity you required a permission from the government, which the government used to decide on its own, and this resulted in huge corruption at the government level. So we got worst of socialism, the controls, restrictive controls, and the worst of capitalism is monopolies. Worst of capitalism is monopolies. So monopolies still got created in that period. So license has ultimately resulted in monopolies. Few people became big, and most of the entrepreneurs or a lot of businessmen, smaller business who wanted to enter into these sectors, they were debarred by these big businessmen with the help of the bureaucrats, with the help of the politicians. So we got worst of both these things. So when Indira Gandhi regime came 1965-66, rather than opening the economy, अच्छा there is a statement I am telling you and you have to interpret this statement. Any country which wants to become export competitive, any country which wants to become export competitive, they will be able to capture the export market, they will be able to become export competitive only if they allow free imports. Generally, most likely, generally, those countries which are export competitive, which have been able to become export competitive, they have been able to become only by allowing free imports or less restrictive imports. Why is this so? More competition. देखो what happens when you allow free imports, that means your domestic economy companies face severe competition from all over the world. In that severe competition, they become efficient, they innovate, and when they become efficient and innovate, they are able to capture the world market also. Without allowing free imports, देखो the best way to become efficient is allow competition. That is the उसके अलावा आप कह के यार पॉलिसी गाइडलाइंस उससे नहीं होता है. The best way is allow competition. ठीक है, that is the best way to become efficient, and allowing competition from all over the world, that is the best way to become competitive. We were not able to become competitive. The reason is we created huge trade barriers. We killed basically competition, and by creating huge trade barriers, this foreign investment was also not allowed. FDI very restrictive. चलो उसको आगे डिस्कस करेंगे हम. So 65-66, rather than allowing imports when the other Asian economies were opening their borders, facing competition and becoming competitive, what we were doing in India? बैंक नेशनलाइजेशन 1969. देखो कुछ इसके पॉजिटिव्स भी, ऐसा नहीं कि निगेटिव है, बट निगेटिव्स ज़्यादा है. Bank nationalization, then
कंट्री में कैपिटल
फ्री इम्पोर्ट डजेंट आई मीन कि 0% इम्पोर्ट ड्यूटी, मतलब थोड़ा सा इम्पोर्ट्स अलाउ करो।
सर उस कंट्री में कैपिटल इंडस्ट्री होनी चाहिए कि नहीं चाहिए, मतलब कि ये नेशन स्टेट में 1947 का सिचुएशन हो या 1965 का सिचुएशन हो।
इंश्योरेंस सेक्टर नेशनलाइज्ड 1972। Has it been reversed?
प्राइवेट सेक्टर की कौन सेक्टर है?
सो बैंक नेशनलाइजेशन 1969। सी बैंक नेशनलाइजेशन का पर्पज ये था कि the credit, there was a huge credit gap in the rural areas and a lot of banks were not opening branches in rural areas, so government thought that if government will nationalize, take over these banks, government will force these banks to give credit to rural areas. So in that way this was successful, that after nationalization the bank branches increased a lot, but what happened, most of the public sector banks, they turned into losses. Why? These public sector banks, a lot of MPs, MLAs, bureaucrats forced these public sector banks to give loan to their relatives and other things, which turned into NPAs. So number of branches increased, to a certain extent financial inclusion happened, but a lot of these banks turned into losses, NPAs increased a lot. So government had to put money into those banks. So कुछ positive हुआ, but it was negative also in that sense. Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act, MRTP 1969. So monopolies as such, good or bad, क्या होती है? देखो, as such absolute sense में they are not bad. Try to understand one thing. If a particular company, by their innovative methods and by their efficient business model, if they are becoming monopolistic, should government prevent it? No. अब Amul butter is a monopoly. Amul butter is a monopoly. ठीक है. So monopolies, if some company by their efficient business model, by their cheaper products, by their innovative products, if they are able to capture the market, as such there is no wrong. But if monopolies are getting created through unfair trade practices, then government must try to prevent it. जो हमारे यहाँ कॉम्पिटिशन कमीशन ऑफ इंडिया है, ठीक है, it is a fair trade regulator. Whenever this mergers and acquisition happens, all these mergers and acquisitions which is happening above rupees 1000 crore turnover, if a company's turnover is more than 1000 crore, then they must take approval of CCI for merger and acquisition. So monopolies as such absolute sense are not bad, but if they are getting created by unfair trade practices and illegal practices, then it is bad. Now government enacted this act, Monopolies and Restrictive Trade Practices Act. Government put a blanket ban that no company can become bigger more than 20 crore of assets. ठीक है, 20 crore of assets से expand नहीं कर सकते हो. Now when we put this act, 2 crore, 20 crore, फिर बाद में increase हुआ this number of assets, value of this assets. So when government put a cap that no company can increase their asset size beyond this, that means government put a cap, and then our companies were not able to exploit economies of scale. Companies were not able to acquire economies of scale. When government is putting a blanket ban in the sense कि सब पे put कर दिया, but with certain approvals, with certain permissions, some companies were allowed by bribing the government. So even if we, so this act basically prevented a lot of businessmen to become big, but those who wanted to become big by unfair trade practices, वो तो फिर भी बड़े बन गए by bribing the government, by corrupt practices. So this prevented smaller businessmen, medium class businessmen to expand their capacities, but some companies who had resources, they were able to bribe the government and they have been able to become monopolistic even after implementing this act. Some economists say that this one single act killed the industrial revolution, entrepreneurial revolution, which could have happened in India in that period.
जो भी आपने मोनोपोली का केस बताया अमूल बटर के केस में, तो सर वो मोनोपोली बना अपने चीप प्रोडक्ट और क्वालिटी
बेटर क्वालिटी से,
लेकिन सर जब अब वो मार्केट में अकेला मोनोपोली एस्टैब्लिश हो गया और कैप्चर कर लिया मार्केट,
हाँ हाँ,
तो सर विद टाइम इट विल अगेन,
हाँ, so if it tries to increase the product size, so what government should do, rather than putting a ban, what government should do, government should give incentives for smaller businessmen to come into this business. Government should increase the tax level on bigger companies as such.
लेकिन हम फिर भी बैड ही बोलेंगे ना, मतलब
देखो मोनोपोलीज आप किस सेंस में आप बोल रहे हो ना, if that's what I am saying, if some companies by their innovative methods and better product pricing are becoming monopolistic, as such it is not bad. If it is creating by unfair trade practices, it is bad. But once a company becomes monopolistic, then there will always be a chance that they can exploit the consumers. So government should always have in mind that in every sector at least there should be at 4-5 players, 3-4 players in the market. And that government can do by creating a level playing field, by promoting more small businessmen, by giving certain kind of incentives to startups. वो करना चाहिए rather than putting a ban. जब आप ban लगाते हो ना as such, it hurts investments. जैसे सपोज करो दिल्ली गवर्नमेंट suppose says that कि no education company can increase their asset size more than 10 crore. अगर ये बैन होता ना, सही बता दें, suppose this ban would have been there 10 crore, तो हो सकता है SR Private Limited or Forum IS or same other company, they would not have entered. They would not have entered. 10 crore का बैन लग जाएगा तो नहीं एंटर करेंगे. So it kills in the entrepreneurial revolution. It prevents a lot of young entrepreneurs to enter into business when you put a ban as such. So rather than putting a ban, we should try that monopolies should not get created at the first place itself. जैसे आज की डेट में आप यहाँ कुछ बैन लगा दो, देखो आई सेड कल की डेट में कि रिमेंबर दिस वन वर्ड इकोनॉमीज ऑफ स्केल. दिस वन वर्ड हैज अ ह्यूज इम्पैक्ट. आपके लिए बहुत नॉर्मल सा वर्ड होगा, आपके लिए आज की डेट में करंट अफेयर्स बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट हो गया, ठीक है. बिजनेस के लिए इकोनॉमीज ऑफ स्केल इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. यू वोंट बिलीव अ स्टील प्लांट 1 मिलियन टन हो सकता है, कॉस्ट ऑफ प्रोडक्शन 30 रुपीज़ पर के जी स्टील का है. इफ यू सेट अप अ 6 मिलियन टन ना, इट कम्स डाउन टू 15 रुपीज़. नाउ हु विल कम्पीट विद दैट 15 रुपीज़? सो इट हैज़ अ मेजर इम्पैक्ट. सो we should not try to put a ban as such. We should try to promote more small businessmen to enter into that business. When you put a ban, it prevents a lot of small businessmen to enter, और फिर वो investments और वहाँ decline होने लगता है. So we put this ban as such. Insurance sector nationalized in 1972. अब आप देखो, before 1972, private companies were there in insurance. आज की डेट में इंडिया में इंश्योरेंस पेनिट्रेशन इज वेरी लेस, ठीक है. Why? One of the single reason is we nationalized this thing. So private companies didn't come here. Now we have started increasing FDI in that. आप समझो एक चीज, before this private sector was allowed. 1972 onwards we banned, and post 1991 again we have started allowing. So this was a kind of U-turn, back step. इसके पहले allowed था. See, the reforms should always move in one direction. Rather than front and back, it kills investments. The government's policies, जैसे हम बोलते हैं ना कि what should we do to bring investment? So for that, government's policies should be fill in the blanks. एक word अगर आपको fill करना हो, to promote more and more investments in the country, the government's policies should be progressive.
Increase competition in the market.
एक word. It is said that the government's policies should be predictable. Government's policy should be predictable. जब हम डिफेंस पढ़ा थे एफडीआई में, तो समवन सेड कि सर 100% एफडीआई अलाउ कर दो और फिर बाद में जब कंपटीशन हो जाए तो बैन कर दो, ठीक है। इससे क्या होगा ना कि फ्यूचर में, सो दैट मीन्स गवर्नमेंट पॉलिसी आर नॉट प्रेडिक्टेबल, ठीक है। सो इफ गवर्नमेंट पॉलिसी आर प्रेडिक्टेबल, दैट हेल्प्स इन ब्रिंगिंग इन्वेस्टमेंट, दैट हेल्प्स इन ब्रिंगिंग इन्वेस्टमेंट। नाउ हियर वी आर नेशनलाइजिंग एंड देन वी आर अगेन अलाउइंग, जैसे आज की पोस्ट 1991 और पॉलिसी आर मूविंग इन द सेम डायरेक्शन। नाउ इफ यू विल गो डू हियर एंड देयर, इट विल किल इन्वेस्टमेंट फॉर द नेक्स्ट 10-15 ईयर्स। और इन्वेस्टमेंट नहीं आएगा तो जॉब एंड अदर थिंग्स। कोल सेक्टर नेशनलाइज 1973, कोल सेक्टर नेशनलाइज 1973। एक सिंगल सेक्टर का देखो क्या इंपैक्ट पड़ा है। 1973 में भी नेशनलाइज्ड कोल, दैट मीन्स वी सेड दैट कि नो प्राइवेट कंपनी कैन प्रोड्यूस एंड कैन एक्सट्रैक्ट एंड सेल कोल, ओनली कोल इंडिया लिमिटेड गवर्नमेंट कंपनी रिमेन्ड। नाउ कोल इंडिया लिमिटेड ओनली गवर्नमेंट कंपनी रिमेन्ड, they became inefficient, that means cost of production उनका ज़्यादा था। कोल इंडिया लिमिटेड one of the most inefficient companies in the world। कैसे, how do we measure it? Total output upon total number of laborers, so per labor production is least। one of the biggest coal company, one of the least inefficient, one of the most inefficient companies। So we said in India in 1973 that private companies can't produce and sell coal, only government can produce, and government was not able to increase production because of its inefficiencies. So Indian power and steel companies started importing coal. When they started importing coal, we have spent billions of dollars every year in coal import, and whatever jobs could have been created in India, we have lost those jobs. We have lost those jobs, we have lost foreign exchange reserves. So this was a total failure, and when only Coal India Limited was allowed to produce, they became inefficient, cost of production of coal was high, and this cost of electricity in India is high. Cost of production of electricity is high, and that is why you don't set up manufacturing plants here. You try to import goods from China, because यहाँ पे cost of production is very high. Just one single step, it has killed our electricity sector. It has made our electricity generation very costly. What was the logic? कुछ नहीं. Public of India in post 1947 period. देखो, I am again saying कि till Nehru it worked still fine. Till Nehru it worked still fine, and base of capital goods industries increased. The major issues started happening post 1960, जैसे लाइसेंस राज का जो स्ट्रॉन्ग होल्ड है ना, it increased in the Indira Gandhi regime. Huge corruption. In every economic activity, to take permission, you had to give bribe. So post independence, the public of India chose the socialist or mixed economic model of development, thinking that the government whom they are choosing, the government will act on behalf of the public. The government will work in favor of the public, on behalf of the public, but government, socialist government, that acted for themselves, that means ministers, bureaucrats, that acted for themselves, and they acted for few selected businessmen. So people of India in post 1947 supported this socialist and mixed economic model of development, thinking that government will work on their behalf, but government started working for themselves and few businessmen, politicians, bureaucrats, and that's why you have thrown out this socialist model. आप ही लोग थ्रो आउट कर दिए ना? हाँ, नहीं, आप ही लोग ने किया है. आप ही लोग मीन द इंडियन पब्लिक. Because, and why you threw out this model? You have See, you have chosen Congress, you have chosen BJP, you have not chosen this model, because this model you realize that the increase in per capita income was less. The increase in standard of living by adopting this model of economic development was not happening properly. So you threw out this model and you adopted a new model of development. If in future something new comes, you may accept that also. भाई आज से 500 years back you accepted a king, है ना, और बहुत खुश भी थे हम लोग, बहुत खुश थे. But times change, revolution, 1947 onwards you choose a socialist model. फिर then you realize that कि again there is a better model through which your standard of living can increase in a better way. So that's why you choose that model also. In future कुछ और इससे better आता है, if something comes, you will progress to that also. And we all are trying to increase our standard of living, productivity, production, income, consumption, expenditure level. इसका impact हम लोग बाद में देखेंगे. But so coal sector nationalized 1973, and so Indian companies started importing coal, and few companies, one or two companies, they became coal trading companies. They became coal trading companies, and they exploited. छोड़ो, रिकॉर्ड हो रहा है, बाद में बताएंगे आपको. Foreign Exchange Regulation Act. Foreign Exchange Regulation Act. By enacting this Foreign Exchange Regulation Act, we started restricting the foreign exchange. Restricting the foreign exchange, that means if someone is coming with dollars to set up a factory here, government used to decide that whether he can come or not, how much dollars he can convert to set up industries. If you want to go abroad, how much rupees should be converted into dollars. Government started regulating these things, Foreign Exchange Regulation Act. By this act, Foreign Exchange Regulation Act, by not allowing foreign money coming into India, we have divided ourselves of foreign technology. Explain this statement. फिर से सुन लो. By foreign FERA के through we regulated. देखो, now which act is there? Foreign Exchange Management Act. दोनों में डिफरेंस क्या समझ लो. गैस की जो नॉब होती है ना, यू रेगुलेट करके क्या करते हो, यू इंक्रीज और डिक्रीज द सप्लाई. ठीक है. तो दिस एक्ट रेगुलेटेड द फॉरेन एक्सचेंज. गवर्नमेंट टू सर्टेन एक्सटेंट गवर्नमेंट अलाउड, देन गवर्नमेंट रिस्ट्रिक्टेड इट. जितना गवर्नमेंट चाहती थी, गवर्नमेंट यूज टू अलाउ दैट फॉरेन एक्सचेंज इन द कंट्री. नाउ वी हैव फॉरेन एक्सचेंज मैनेजमेंट एक्ट. वी अलाउ एवरीथिंग. We are just managing that it is not creating any sort of problem or volatility. So we are managing. Earlier we were regulating this thing. So by not allowing foreign money coming into India, foreign money coming into India means investment. Very few sectors, very less was allowed. So by not allowing foreign money coming into India, we divided ourselves of foreign technology. कैसे?
पैसे नहीं आएंगे तो यहाँ इंडस्ट्रीज एस्टैब्लिश नहीं होंगी.
एक
countries have far better technology than us. उनकी technology and our policies were not predictable.
So usually these investors own the technology. So if they are not coming, they won't bring that technology.
कोई देखो ऐसा नहीं कि आप सल्यूट सही या गलत है. आई जस्ट वांट टू नो कि व्यू आप कितना समझ रहे हो इस चीज को. हाँ, एक सेकंड. राइट. आजकल ज़्यादा कॉन्सेंट्रेट करके सुन रहा है. देखो, व्हाट हैपेंस व्हेन यू अलाउ फॉरेन मनी, तो दे डू इन्वेस्टमेंट हियर. सो व्हेन दे डू FDI हियर, they own the company, or to a certain extent they have certain ownership. They appoint board of directors. When they appoint board of directors, they manage the company, they get involved into the management. So they bring the technology also. Suppose there is a defense company outside, ठीक है, with a better technology. Now if we allow foreign investment coming into India, so if they will own a subsidiary here, so they will always bring that technology here to make this company profitable. And if you will not allow for FDI, वो क्या ऐसे कोई टेक्नोलॉजी ट्रांसफर कर देंगे. बट व्हेन यू अलाउ देम टू सेट अप फैक्ट्रीज हियर, उनका पैसा इन्वॉल्व है, They will try to make these companies profitable. So they bring the best technology available in the world into this country. और ये नहीं अलाउ करने से आज के देखो कि 80% ऑफ द डिफेंस इक्विपमेंट्स वी आर इम्पोर्टिंग। और पाकिस्तान की इतनी हिम्मत हो रही कि F-16 भेज दे रहा। अगर हम लोग पहले अलाउ किए होते तो शायद कंडीशन ही नहीं होती है। So these were regressive steps. After 20 years of development, we should have opened our economy, what the other economies were doing, rather than moving into backward direction. These were all mostly regressive steps. फ्री इंपोर्ट का नहीं, फ्री इंपोर्ट मीन्स लेस रिस्ट्रिक्टिव होना चाहिए भाई। 200% इंपोर्ट ड्यूटीज थी, सो वी शुड हैव अलाउड सर्टेन लेवल ऑफ प्रोडक्ट्स हियर।
मोटिव क्या था लास्ट वाले एक्ट के लिए? मतलब तो बिल्कुल ही
अच्छा चलो मोटिव बताते हैं। हाँ,
मतलब 1947 में रखना चाहिए कि मतलब 1967 की सिचुएशन जो टाइम का सिचुएशन है 1967।
और देखो कुछ चीजें वो टाइम पीरियड भी अलग था। आप समझो 60 इयर्स बैक, देखो आपने बोला ना कि क्या मोटिव था। सी आज की डेट में ही इज आस्किंग कि व्हाट वाज द मोटिव ऑफ दिस नेशनलाइजेशन एंड अदर थिंग्स। आज की डेट में सपोज मोदी जी 8 बजे लाइव आते हैं, ठीक है, टीवी पे, जैसे डिमोनेटाइजेशन टाइम आए थे, एंड सपोज ही सेज कि वी आर प्राइवेटाइजिंग इंडियन रेलवे, ठीक है, तो भले ही पाकिस्तान को खत्म कर दें, ही विल लूज द इलेक्शन। इफ ही सेज ना कि ही इज प्राइवेटाइजिंग इंडियन रेलवे, अगर आज की डेट में अनाउंस करते हैं ना, तो द मोस्ट लाइकली ही विल लूज द इलेक्शन। छोड़ दो पाकिस्तान के बाद, पाकिस्तान के साथ हमारे कुछ ज़्यादा ही सेंटिमेंट्स जुड़ गए हैं, उसका रिजल्ट नहीं, बट लीविंग पाकिस्तान असाइड, इफ ही सेज दैट वी आर प्राइवेटाइजिंग रेलवेज ना, ही इज बाउंड टू लूज इलेक्शन। हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू एक्सेप्ट दिस थिंग? इंडियन रेलवेज के साथ ना हमारे, इट इज नॉट ओनली अबाउट द 40-50 लाख पीपल वर्किंग देयर, उन्हीं के लिए नहीं है एज सच, इट इज द सेंटिमेंट्स ऑफ द इंडियन पीपल अटैच्ड विथ इंडियन रेलवे, भारतीय रेल, ठीक है, रिलेटिव्स जो भी ना, हमारे सेंटिमेंट्स जुड़े हुए हैं। इफ गवर्नमेंट अनाउंसेस कि प्राइवेटाइज कर रहे हैं ना, इट मे बी पॉसिबल दैट नेक्स्ट 10-15 ईयर्स में दैट बीजेपी गवर्नमेंट विल नेवर चूज। और हम लोग कितना वोट देते हैं, जो मोस्ट ऑफ द पब्लिक जिनके सेंटिमेंट्स जुड़े हैं, दे आर गिविंग द वोट एंड दे विल थ्रो आउट दिस गवर्नमेंट इफ दे विल प्राइवेटाइज इंडियन रेलवे, ठीक है। एयर इंडिया को गवर्नमेंट हैड द करेज टू प्लान फॉर दिस इन्वेस्टमेंट, क्योंकि एयर इंडिया से इंडियन पब्लिक के सेंटिमेंट नहीं जुड़े हैं। अ फ्यू एलीट क्लास ट्रेवल्स इन दैट, ठीक है, और वो जनरली वोट देते नहीं है जो भी है, बट इंडियन रेलवेज रूरल एरिया हर जगह से इट इज कनेक्टेड, सो आवर सेंटिमेंट्स आर रिलेटेड, ठीक है। तो आज की डेट में इफ गवर्नमेंट अनाउंसेस दैट वी आर प्राइवेटाइजिंग इंडियन रेलवे, मोस्ट लाइकली दे विल लूज द इलेक्शन। इसी तरह से 1960s में when government used to announce that we are nationalizing a private company, it used to gain a lot of support from the public. It used to gain a lot of support from the public. It was one of the best ways to win the elections. कुछ इकोनॉमिक रीजंस थे, वो नहीं हो पाए। जैसे बैंक का था, एक अच्छा पर्पस क्या था कि टू इंक्रीज द क्रेडिट और टू इंक्रीज द फाइनेंशियल इंक्लूजन, बट इट हैम्पर्ड द बैंक्स इन अदर वेज, बट वन ऑफ द मेजर वाज पॉलिटिकल रीजंस फॉर दिस। वो हम लोग क्या करेंगे वो अभी इसके बाद कल वो विल सी दैट, ठीक है। सो वन ऑफ द मेजर रीजन वाज पॉलिटिकल रीजंस, और एक दो केसेस में कुछ इकोनॉमिक रीजंस थे। जैसे आई सेड कि कैपिटलिस्ट का जो वर्स्ट है दैट इज मोनोपोली, सो वी डिड दिस MRTP एक्ट, बट स्टिल सम कंपनीज बिकेम मोनोपोली, ठीक है। तो दीज वेर नॉट इंप्लीमेंटेड ऑन ग्राउंड प्रॉपरली। सो इन्फ्लेशन वॉज जनरली हायर इन दिस पीरियड। अच्छा, व्हाट अबाउट ग्रोथ? तो आप लोग दो फेज में याद रखना, 50 to 65-60 नेहरू का पीरियड, एंड देन 65-66 टू 1990 तक, 1990 तक याद रखना आप। यहाँ पे 19, इफ वी कीप 1980, दिस पीरियड 30 years, 3 decades, growth rate हिंदू रेट ऑफ ग्रोथ, अ डिरोगेटरी टर्म, निगेटिव सेंस में होता है 3.5% हिंदू रेट ऑफ ग्रोथ, ठीक है। सो द ग्रोथ वॉज, मीनिंग मत पूछो इसका, अ हिंदू कंट्री प्रॉब्लम, हाँ
सेक्युलर है ना सभी के कंट्री सेक्युलर है, तो हम इसमें हिंदू रेट कैसे कर सकते हैं?
अब ये दिया गया था प्रोफेसर राज कृष्णा ने कॉइन किया था, अब उनसे तो हमने डायरेक्टली पूछा नहीं, बट दिस टर्म हैज बीन यूज्ड इन अ नेगेटिव सेंस दैट दिस कंट्री where majority of the population is Hindus, they can't grow beyond 3.5%. In a negative sense use हुआ, ठीक है। Hindu rate of growth for the first 3 decades. And what was the population growth in this phase? हाँ, बोलने से पहले सोच लो।
मैंने
15% मंथली, हाँ जब परसेंट बता, हाँ बताओ, हाँ तो ये भी बोलना चाहिए ना, 2.2% एनुअली, ठीक है 2.2%, तो डिकेड या ईयर बोलना चाहिए ना, कि बस ऐसे ही बोल दोगे, हम सब समझते रहे कि डिकेड था कि मंथ था या क्वार्टरली ग्रोथ था। पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ 2.2% एनुअल ग्रोथ, जनरली वी कॉल इट एनुअल ग्रोथ, ठीक है। कैसे कैलकुलेट करते हैं? अरे गिने ना कि कितने लोग पैदा हो रहे हैं, किससे कंपेयर? एवरी ईयर आवर पॉपुलेशन वाज इंक्रीजिंग बाय 2.2%, ऑफ कोर्स पिछले साल से पॉपुलेशन वाज इंक्रीजिंग बाय 2.2% एनुअली, हाँ एनुअल ग्रोथ प्रोजेक्टेड, एनुअल ग्रोथ ये प्रोजेक्टेड था बेस्ड ऑन द सेंसस, बेस्ड ऑन द सेंसस एनुअल ग्रोथ आप प्रोजेक्ट कर सकते हो ना, 10 साल का ग्रोथ इतना है तो एनुअल ग्रोथ यू कैन ऑलवेज कैलकुलेट। पर कैपिटा जीडीपी ग्रोथ कैलकुलेट करके बताओ, पर कैपिटा जीडीपी ग्रोथ कैलकुलेट करके बताओ। क्या लिख क्या रहे हो? नहीं पहले वाला नहीं, अभी वाला कैलकुलेट करना है ना।
1.31
पर कैपिटा जीडीपी ग्रोथ,
1.31
मुझे नहीं पता, मतलब मुझे भी कैलकुलेट करना पड़ेगा।
1.59
व्हाट डिड यू डू? अरे आप बाद में पूछना, व्हाट डिड यू डू, किसको किससे डिवाइड किया? अरे एक सेकंड शांत हो आप लोग, आप बताओ किस नंबर से किस नंबर को डिवाइड करें? अरे नंबर बोलो ना कि किसको किससे डिवाइड करें। अब हाँ 3.5 बाई यही किया है। आप लोग को मैंने बताया नहीं, ये सही से बताना। हाँ ये क्लास में बताया हुआ और टेस्ट में आया हुआ है क्वेश्चन, आया टेस्ट में नहीं आया? आया है? आई डोंट रिमेम्बर बट मैंने बताया था। अच्छा यू डोंट रिमेम्बर अबाउट, कैसे भाई आप लोग को ये बताया हुआ, 2-3 बार बताया हुआ है। यहीं पे मैं डिमोटिवेट हो जाता हूँ। हाँ क्या आया आंसर? यार ये अच्छा बताए हैं कि नहीं बताए ये चीज? ये ग्रोथ रेट है, ये पॉपुलेशन, ये जीडीपी ग्रोथ है और ये पॉपुलेशन ग्रोथ। फिर आप पूछोगे सर कि क्या स्ट्रेटेजी से प्रिपेयर करें? हाँ कुछ स्ट्रेटेजी नहीं होता है। किससे किसको डिवाइड करेंगे आप बताओ? नहीं, करेक्ट ही होता तो मैं इतना कहाँ टाइम वेस्ट करता। अब रहने तो सर नहीं करो।
सर मैं वही पूछा था सर
कितना आ रहा है बताओ नंबर। ये सेम आएगा, इसको मल्टीप्लाई कर दोगे 100 या 1000 से तो सेम हो जाएगा। ये कहाँ से आया, कितनी बार बताएं कहाँ से आया। इधर देखो आप, पर कैपिटा जीडीपी कैसे निकालते हो, जीडीपी डिवाइडेड बाय पॉपुलेशन। दिस इज योर पर कैपिटा जीडीपी। जीडीपी इंक्रीज बाय 3.5%, तो वाई से कितना हो गया, ये जीडीपी हो गया आपका। पॉपुलेशन पी से, अब पर कैपिटा जीडीपी ये हो गया। ये बताओ कितना आ रहा है इसका आंसर, ये 1.01। आगे और चाहिए ना, एक सेकंड, 1.0 0.012. Okay, see, so this is basically 1.012 y upon p। ये क्वेश्चन यूपीएससी में आया भी हुआ है, ये हो गया। सो y बाई p इंक्रीज टू 1.0, सो 1 दिस इंक्रीज टू दिस, सो 1 to 1.012 कितना परसेंट इंक्रीज है, 1.2%। So your per capita GDP, per person GDP, per person income was increasing every year by just 1.2%. Your income, real income or real per capita per person GDP was increasing by just 1.2%. That is why we were not able to pull a lot of people out of poverty in this period. ऐसे समझो आप, इधर देखो, suppose our population growth would have been 3.5%. Population growth would have been 3.5%. Then what would have been the per capita GDP growth? What would have been the per capita GDP growth? Zero. Same क्या होता है? When I am asking per capita GDP growth, you should say 0%. ठीक है? So because of very less growth, very high because of less economic growth, high population growth, per person GDP was increasing just by 1.2%. That's why most of the people remained under poverty. We are able to pull very little population out of poverty. Now as of today, GDP growth 7-8%, population growth 1%, per capita GDP growth more than 6%. So every year a lot of people are moving out of poverty because per person income is increasing a lot. अब नहीं भूलोगे आप, ये बताएं ना, बताएं, वीडियो जाके देखना आप। और ये बेसिक फिलॉसफी पूरे इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट की, पर कैपिटा जीडीपी ग्रोथ। क्या हुआ, ये कैसे आया? अप्रैल से सीसेट स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं, ठीक है, वहां पे पढ़ लेना आप। इधर देखो आप, 1980 ऑनवर्ड्स ना हम लोग कल पढ़ेंगे, ठीक है, 1980 ऑनवर्ड्स हम लोग कल पढ़ेंगे। दिस विल कंटिन्यू फॉर नेक्स्ट 2 days, ठीक है। तो कोशिश करना कि आप बीच में एब्सेंट नहीं करो, ठीक। सेग्रीगेटेड टॉपिक्स हैं, ये होगा 2 दिन, फिर नेक्स्ट 2 days सब्सिडीज होगा, फिर नेक्स्ट 2 days एग्रीकल्चर होगा, फिर नेक्स्ट 1 day सप्लाई चेन होगा, फिर नेक्स्ट 2 days इंटरनेशनल इंस्टीट्यूशंस होगा, फिर नेक्स्ट 4 days इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर होगा, और लास्ट डे बाकी छूटा झटका सब कुछ हो जाएगा, गिलोटिन।